Okay. So today we'll discuss about the functions of communication, and under unit 3, under unit 2 you have different types of communication, and unit 3 you have models of communication. 4 we have theories of communication. So we'll begin with the functions of communication today, and we'll discuss the typology of communication. Okay. So what are the various functions of communication? Mass communication generally. So first one is surveillance. I think you have those functions. Some of them are there in your books and some of them are not there. But the first function of communication is surveillance. Second is correlation. Third is mobilization. Then entertainment, information, uh, instruction. Then we have agenda setting, gatekeeping, persuasion, debate and discussion, and so on, transmission of culture, etc. So, if you see the surveillance function of communication, mass communication is nothing but the mass communication will try to alert the people about the expected dangers in the society. So here there are various things which are happening throughout the globe, and how we are able to come to know about all those instances or events is only with the help of the mass communication. So media alerts the people about the expected dangers which are there in the society, like maybe crime, child lifting, or relating to the floods, earthquakes, or even minor inconveniences like auto strike, bus strike, or any government policy decisions, etc. So we may look for the alternative arrangements when the media alerts the people about all these kind of information. For example, if there is a auto strike or bus strike, we come to know about all these things through through the with the help of the media. So we may look for the alternative transportation facilities which are there to reach our destination. So in that way, media is alerting the people about not only the major inconveniences which may affect the public life, but the minor inconveniences also which may affect the public life. Okay, yesterday there was the news regarding the Narendra Modi's visit. So all those media channels paid attention to that event, and we come to know about what the Prime Minister addressed to the individuals, or what he spoke on the platform where he visited, what he was doing at, yesterday, etc. So only because of the media which paid attention to that issue, and because of that we came to know about that event. So the same way media is alerting the people, and sometimes it may also have its dysfunction. For example, if the media alerts us about the crime or rape of girls, children, etc., we might looking at the innocent people who are wandering in your locality also, we may be frightened, and we may also go and complain with the police, or we may catch them, and we may also be them thinking that they are going to they may attempt the crime, etc. So in that way, sometimes we are showing over enthusiasm to certain issues, and sometimes it helps us to plan our day to day work, and it helps us to take care of our children when those kind of instances are happening in a society. So that is the surveillance function of the media, where media is alerting the people about the expected dangers in the society, which are maybe minor inconveniences, or which are maybe the major inconveniences or major instances which may affect the public life in a society. So here, the next function of the media is correlation. Generally, correlation is nothing but the selection, interpretation, and evaluation of the news is done by the media institution for the public, for the benefit of the public. So, out of the many instances or events which are happening throughout the globe, media only picks up some stories. Those they think that those are important for the public, and They prioritize the news in terms of the headlines or in terms of the placement of stories in the broadcast media. And we also adopt the same kind of order of priority which is set by the media, that we call it as a agenda setting function of the media. So here, media, as if the media is not going to interpret any messages, we will not be able to know about the background of the event or the history or the present, what is happening in that kind of issue, etc. So here, the media is not only selecting the stories for the audiences, the consumers or the media, but it also provides the context, the history of a particular issue. For example, if you see the news analysis, the history, the present, or the future, etc., all that information relating to a particular topic is being discussed by the media with the in a news analysis, in the broadcast media, or maybe in a news article that is printed in the newspapers. So here, media selects the stories for the audiences, the mass media audiences, then it also interprets, it also provides the context or background for a story. Along with that, it also evaluates, which means how much emphasis has to be given to a particular story is also been decided by the mass media organizations before it provides for, before the information is going to be disseminated for the larger audiences with the help of the mass media channels. Then media entertainment function of the media is something where the media also provides a lot of entertainment for the public, and even though it also provides a social utility or what we call the socialization function of the media, which changes the attitudes of the people. And social utility is nothing but to socialize with the other individuals. We also use the media as a platform. And when we are bored with our day to day works, when we are tired, etc., or if we want to have some kind of relaxation or diversion, we also depending on the media institutions. And as the television is the audiovisual medium which is providing a lot of entertainment content for the viewers. And if you are listening to a radio station also, it also provides entertainment or relaxation, and because of that, we are ourselves paying attention to those kind of media channels. Along with that, if you see the newspapers and magazines, we also have the specialized magazines which we can read when we have time, like leisurely read magazines are there. There are special interest magazines for women or children and the persons who are into business, etc., the business magazines, etc., are like specialized magazines for the doctors or professionals, etc. We also have magazines called general interest magazines, which are the content is in general provided for all the persons who are exposing themselves to the media content. So here, depending on the various needs of the individuals, they pay attention to the media content and they get entertainment by using the media as a platform. Then mobilization function of the media. The media, there is a theory called development media theory, and which speaks about that media promotes development in the country. And if you see the from the beginning, when the television was introduced in India from 1959 onwards, or when the radio came into existence from 1923 onwards, the prime motive was behind starting these institutions is to promote social education and to promote social development and to promote or to eradicate the social evils which were present at that point of time. And there is a from the beginning to now what we have, the media some way or the other, it tries to change the perceptions of people regarding various issues, and it also tries to change the attitude of the people, or it modifies the human behavior with the content by providing a lot of content for the benefit of the mass media audiences. So here the media is something which acts as a socializing agent, and it also provides a lot of content for the benefit of the viewers to promote the national culture, national development on the whole. Then we have uh, the agenda setting function of the media. So media is nothing but which is setting an agenda for the public. So how media sets an agenda, which is by prioritizing the news, by paying attention to some issues and overlooking some other issues. It sets an agenda for the benefit of the viewers, listeners, and the readers. So, agenda setting is nothing but the prioritization is done by the media institutions. They pay attention to only some kind of issues, and different media attention on different issues might also be different depending on the media organization policy. So there are many events which are happening throughout the globe, but do we get all that information which are relating to all the events which are happening throughout the globe? No, because of the lack of space which is available in the newspapers and magazines, lack of time which is available in the broadcast media, a lot of information is going to be uh, dis- going to be filtered or rejected by the media institutions. That we call it as a gatekeeping function of the media. So here the media is setting an agenda. They set order of priority or to discuss the issues for the benefit of the viewers, listeners, and the readers. So they categorize the news in terms of the headlines and also placement of stories in the broadcast media. Okay. So here the mass media is by paying attention to some issues and overlooking other issues, it sets an agenda for the public. And as the viewers, listeners, and the readers of the newspapers, etc., we also set our own agenda, and we also prioritize the news in terms of our own interests, keeping in view various needs of us. We may also set our own agenda, what we call it as a public agenda. And all the issues which are presented by the media, like in the newspapers, all those news write-ups we might not read, but depending on our interest, we only read some parts of the story or some news items which are keep depending on our own interest. And in the broadcast media also, there are 24 into 7 news channels, we have entertainment channels, we have uh, okay, but we might not pay attention to all those channels which are there, but we only pay attention to only some channels and some specific programs depending on our interests. So that is agenda setting function of the media. And there is something called debate and discussion. So here the media provides a platform for the issues to be discussed for the benefit of the mass media audiences. So, for example, if it is a broadcast media, with the help of the debates and discussions, they provide different viewpoints regarding a particular subject of the discussion. So, they call different subject experts, and the subject experts may give their opinion regarding a particular issue which is being discussed. And there is a moderator in the panel discussions. They pose questions to the subject experts, and when we are watching a program in the broadcast media, we get to know different viewpoints about a particular subject which is discussed in the debates and discussions. Then, in the same way, if it is a, newspaper, the news analysis or the columns or the editorial write-ups, etc., that provides the different viewpoints regarding a particular subject which is being dealt by the newspaper. So, in that way, media is also acting as a platform for the debates and discussions are to be conducted for the benefit of the viewers. Then we have persuasion, that is also a media function. Media persuades the audience to change their behavior or to accept or reject some kind of practices, or it also disseminates information regarding the various new innovations which uh, which are maybe for the benefit of the viewers, listeners, and also the readers. So here, any new innovation is nothing but a new idea or the practice. Generally, all something which is new is disseminated with the help of the broadcast media or newspapers or a radio, as these are the mediums which can reach the large number of audiences. So here, media is also persuades the audience to accept or reject a idea or a practice. For example, now during the COVID situations, the media is alerting the people about the COVID virus, its spread, etc., and media also persuading the audiences to keep social distancing, practice the social distancing and wearing the mask and sanitizing your hands, etc. So that is something media is persuading the audiences to adapt these kind of changes in their social behavior. So when we adapt a social behavior, generally we benefit out of practicing those kind of social behaviors. So media is somewhere or the other, it is acting as the social agent or change agent in a society. Then we have uh, there is something called usant gratifications theory that speaks about that the media is paying attention to various issues, but depending on our interest we are depending on the media to satisfy various needs. So here we have not adapting the order of priority whatever is set by the media, but we are depending on the media institutions to satisfy our own needs. It may be information needs, it may be cognitive needs, or it can be entertainment needs, or it can be the social utility or withdrawal, whatever it may be. So to satisfy various needs we are depending on the media organizations for various reasons. And there is also called information function of the media provides a lot of information for the benefit of the viewers, listeners, and the audiences. So here whatever may be happening throughout the globe we are able to come to know about all these information only with the help of the media institutions. So these are the various and one more function is the transmission of culture. The media is also transmits the culture from one generation to the other generation. There is a communication scholar called Severin and Thakkar. He says that media is media is behind the transmission of culture from a generation to the other generation, or from the members of a social system to the newcomers. So like how we are able to, this is also a social behavior we adopt by looking at the portrayals of various persons or personalities. Like we might adapt how the Lord Rama used to uh, if we see the mythological stories, it will have its impact on us how a person uh, should behave in the social system, or the values we have to practice, or the way we have to dress, the way we have to speak, the way we have to uh, uh, disseminate or adapt a kind of order of priority, etc. All that information we learn by the help of the media. So these are the functions of media. We'll move on to the different types of communication. Yes, the functions of media, some of the functions are mentioned in your books and some of them were not there. But just to have a brief and uh, to have an understanding about the various functions of the media, we have discussed all these functions. Then we have a typology of communication. We have more than half an hour. Okay. Different types of communication based on we have already discussed about what is communication. The communication is nothing but the transmission of information from one person to the other person, or from one place to the other place. So here we have already discussed about the elements of communication also, like source, message, channel, receiver, and feedback. These are the uh, five important elements. Along with that, we have already discussed about the noise also, anything which disrupts the communication process. So here you have a typology of communication based on the number of persons who are involved in the communication experience. So apart from that, we also have a different typology of communication, like direct communication, indirect communication, mediated communication, non-mediated communication, etc. But all these typology of communication, what you have in syllabus, they will fall under one or the other typology of communication. So direct communication speaks about that communication happens between the individuals in a face-to-face direct manner, etc. It is applicable to the interpersonal communication, what we will discuss now, and it also applicable to the group communication, where the group members also directly exchange the information, or the communication happens between the group members. And mediated communication and indirect communication is like mass communication. The sender and the receivers are separated by the mediums, and the information is disseminated for the larger audience. Because there is no direct connectivity between the two individuals, we call it as a indirect communication. And mediated communication is also same, something is mediating between the source and the receiver. That is example for the mass communication. And if it is a non-mediated communication, it is uh, uh, just like the direct communication, which happens between the two or more individuals in a direct face-to-face manner. So here what you have in your syllabus is the typology of communication based on the number of people who are experiencing the communication, or those who are involved in the communication experience or communication process. So here the first one is you have is intrapersonal communication. Intra means generally within the self. So intrapersonal communication is nothing but the communication which is happening within the self. So from the getting up, for example, when you are getting up from your bed, you think of something, which means you started already communicating within the self. It is the intrapersonal communication. And when you look at the things, when you are listening to a music, or when you are watching a television also, you think of the music is like melodious, or when you look at the portrayals, if they are appealing, uh, uh, you may pay attention to those kind of characters which are played, and you may think that the portrayal is good, or the story is, narration is good, etc., or the visuals are good, etc. So you have already communicating within the self. And there are two kinds of communication under the intrapersonal communication. One is a subconscious intrapersonal communication, the other one is uh, conscious intrapersonal communication. So here in a conscious intrapersonal communication, the individual know what he is communicating, what he is doing. For example, meditation, praying to God, or thinking about your own problems when you are looking at the surroundings, etc. You may interact with the surroundings, etc., looking at the things. Then that is called as a conscious intrapersonal communication, where you have control over the communication. And there is other one, that is some subconscious intrapersonal communication. Generally you don't have control over the communication. For example, when you are sleeping, you may get dreams, and in dreams also you might communicate with the other individuals are within the self. That is something we call it as a subconscious intrapersonal communication, where you don't have control over the communication. And the one important aspect of this intrapersonal communication is the sender and the receiver are the same. So if it is a interpersonal communication, you have two individuals, they exchange the information. But in intrapersonal communication, as the communication is happening within only the self, the sender and the receiver are same. It is more or less like thinking about your own problems, meditating, or speaking within the self, etc. All this will uh, fall under the intrapersonal communication. Then we have interpersonal communication. All this is I think you have in unit 2, unit or block. So, okay. Interpersonal communication is a communication which is taking place between the two individuals. It is a face to face communication between the two individuals, or it is a conversation or a dialogue between the two individuals which is happening. So here both the individuals who are participating in the process of communication, they exchange the information, and there is a feedback between the individuals. we uh, they get feedback immediately from the other person. Both the individuals, the sender and the receiver, they act as the senders and receivers. For example, if it is a conversation, generally the source communicates a message with the receiver. The air is something which carries the messages from the source to the receiver. Then the receiver again sends his feedback or reaction or a response towards the first person or the source. Then again, the process continues. It is a two-way process of communication where both the individuals are involved in the communication process. And the important aspect of this interpersonal communication is we get the feedback immediately from the other person. Then there are three stages in this interpersonal communication. The first stage is called as the poetic stage. Second one is personal stage. Third one is intimate stage. So generally, when communication is happening between the two individuals in a face-to-face manner, first is the initial stage of communication, where we just it is limited to wishing a person, like saying hi, hello, good morning, etc. And the other person also say may uh, give their feedback the same way. But when they enter into the personal stage of communication, where the both individuals exchange information more than saying the hi, hello, good morning, etc. But they share some of the information relates to their family, relates to their background, or relates to their problems or what they are doing, etc. But they will not able to confide everything what is happening in their life. Okay, so personal stage, it is meant for the friends in a classroom, or it may be the family members, or the communication which is which happens between the members of a organization, etc., the employees. But there is another stage called intimate stage. Those who enter into the intimate stage of interpersonal communication, both the individuals exchange the information, everything what is happening in their life. So there is a possibility they share everything which happens in their life. They confide everything what is happening in their life with the other person. And the intimate stage is only meant for the close friends or the close family members, etc. And all of us might not enter into this personal stage, sorry, the intimate stage of interpersonal communication with all the members of the social system. But it is only limited for the close friends or the close family members, etc. And if you see the advantages of this interpersonal communication, as we know the feedback from the other person or the response, it is more effective way of communication than any other form of communication. Like if it is a group communication, the group members may react or may not react to the source or the speaker. But here, both the individuals, as they are exchanging the information, there is a possibility they get feedback from each other. And because of that, for example, if it is a personal selling kind of thing also, they perceive the consumer to adapt to buy a product or a service, etc. So here they communicate the information with with the receiver or the consumer, and the consumer doubts are clarified by the salesperson, etc. So here it is more effective way of communicating the messages with the other person. But the disadvantage is we can't reach large number of audiences like when we use mass communication channels as the tools of communication. We can reach the large number of audiences who are living throughout the geographical area, who are scattered throughout the globe, etc. But this is as the limitations are there in a interpersonal communication. If you want to disseminate information for a larger audiences, it is more expensive to go about using this interpersonal as a communication tool. But interpersonal communication is more effective way of communication uh, and than any other form of communication. And in interpersonal communication, along with the language we use to express the messages with the other person, we also use the nonverbal cues and signs to express ourselves with the other individual. And for example, when communication is happening, you can give a shake hand, and depending on the other person, their facial expressions, etc., you may uh, derive some kind of meanings. And there is a possibility that if you want to show a lot of empathy or love, you want to show affection, etc., you can hug a person. And here generally all those senses of a human being actively receive or send the information with the other person. So verbal and non-verbal cues are exchanged between the two individuals when the interpersonal communication is happening. That is interpersonal communication. And we also have the group communication. When communication is taking place between between the members of a group, we call it as a group communication. So the group members may more than three members, and it depends on the size of the group. It can have six members, eight or 10 or more than that also. But the large the group is, then there is no possibility of getting the feedback from the members of the group. If there is a smaller group, there is a possibility the members express their feedback towards the speaker, whoever is sending the messages. There are different kinds of groups we have in society. That primary groups, generally the primary group is nothing but it is a group which we belong to. The family is generally considered as a primary group. Then we also have the temporary groups, casual groups, and permanent groups. Casual groups are formed for a time bound. Casual groups are formed on a spontaneous basis. For example, something happens in your locality. Generally, you all form as a group and may participate in the rescue operations, etc. And if there is activity or something is going to happen, you participate voluntarily and accomplish the task, etc. And after completing the task, generally the group disappears. Then you have a temporary groups. The temporary groups are formed for a time bound period. For example, 1 month, 2 months, or 3 months, etc. They are assigned a task. And after doing their work or after meeting their objectives, etc., after completing their work, the group disappears. The committees or associations, etc., which are formed for a time bound period, the committees appointed for a period of time to do certain work or to do a task, etc. Then after submitting the report, the groups disappears. Then we also have a permanent groups. Generally, permanent groups are formed on a permanent basis, and the heads of these groups are keep on changing, and the members join the group by paying certain fees as a member to join that group, and the group will have its own rules and regulations, and the members who are joining the group are abide by the rules and regulations of that particular group. Generally, the associations are like bar associations, or you have trade unions, you also have employees unions. All those are formed on a permanent basis, and the heads might be keep on changing, and to meet certain objectives of the group will function. The group remains on a permanent basis. Then we also have uh, in organizations like media also, we do have certain groups, like editorial department can act one as a group, circulation department, production department, they act as the subgroups of a major organization called the media organization as a group. So they do have certain objectives to meet, or the deadlines to meet, etc. And the group members unitedly they work to accomplish the tasks which are assigned by the major organization. So in that way, the group communication is a communication that is taking place between the members of a group, and depending on the number of people who are participating in the group communication, the feedback also depends on the individuals. So sometimes the group members may actively participate, and they provide their feedback towards the source, and sometimes they might not be able to communicate their feedback, and some of the group members may more actively participate in sending their feedback or opinion regarding the issues which are discussed in the group, and sometimes they may also remain silent depending on the members of the group. Then we have mass communication. Mass communication is nothing but when communication is reaching the large number of audiences or infinity number of audiences or the masses, we are calling it as the mass communication. So, mass communication is using the mass media as the channels of communication to reach the large number of audiences, those who are scattered or living throughout the geographical area throughout the globe. So here, mass media channels, depending on their reach, they can reach the audiences, those who are sitting or living in the throughout the globe. So the invention of the satellite communication enabled us to reach the numbers or the millions of audiences who are scattered throughout the geographical area, and depending on if it is a newspaper, depending on the availability of a newspaper, the reach, we may call who those who are within the reach of the newspaper, we call them as the mass media audiences or the readers of a particular newspaper or a magazine. The same way, if the signals are available throughout the geographical area where it covers, etc., all those are called as the mass media audiences. And if the signals, television signals or radio signals, are reaching throughout the globe, then all those members who are on the platform earth, we can call them as the mass media audiences. But again, it depends on the individuals. We may have we may have the television signals available, but whether we pay attention to that communication, that particular channel, is a different thing. Depending on again our own needs, our own background, our own motives, our own needs, etc., we only pay attention to some kind of news channels or some kind of entertainment channels, and we only listen to a particular station which is broadcast with the help of the radio, etc. So again, it depends on the individuals. But the mass media audiences, as they are scattered, as they are living throughout the globe, We can call them as the anonymous, heterogeneous, and mass audiences. Why we are calling them as the mass media audiences? Mass means a large number of audiences. So because they are under the reach of this mass media channels, we are calling them as the large number of audiences, as they are heterogeneous audiences, because they are scattered throughout the geographical area. They do have different customs practicing, or different cultures they belong to. They are living in a different geographical areas, so all those practices will be different. So because of that, they might be practicing different religions or customs or traditions, etc. Because of that, we are calling them as a heterogeneous audiences. Then they are anonymous. So, as the media institution which is disseminating the information for the larger audience, the mass media audience, the media organizations does not know whom the communication is reaching, and along with that, the audiences are also anonymous to each other, because they are scattered throughout the globe, because they are living in different parts of the globe. So the mass media audiences are nothing but the audiences are the one who are receiving the mass media content with the help of the mass media channels. And mass communication is nothing but communication which is reaching the large number of audiences with the help of the mass media channels. The mass media channels include television, newspaper, radio, magazines, books, and uh, the newspapers. So all of them which can be used to disseminate the information for the large number of audiences, those are called the mass media. And the advantage of mass media is we can reach with the content the n number of audiences who are anywhere throughout the globe. So we can persuade the millions of audiences at a time with our content, because they can expose to the media content, etc. That is the only advantage of mass communication. But again, there is a theory called individual differences theory, which speaks that depending on the individual's uh, unique characteristics, different individuals may pay attention to the different media channels. Again, they selectively expose themselves to the media content, selectively perceive or understand, and selectively retain the information which they receive from the mass media. That is also there. And keep depending on our needs, we only consume different kinds of information which is being propagated by the mass media. That is the those are the different types of communications. And again, we also have an interactive communication that is not there in your syllabus, but interactive communication is nothing but when we are using the information and communication technologies to communicate with the individuals, that is called as interactive communication. So here in interactive communication, there is something called asynchronicity. Depending on our interest as the source, we can communicate the messages to the individuals. And here there is a possibility, depending on the individuals, the receivers also, depending on their own convenient time, they can pay attention to the communication, they can receive, they can send their feedback. But here, like in mass communication, we can also reach the millions of audiences with the help of the tools we can use in the interactive communication. Like we can send SMS to a large number of audiences at a time. We can reach with a mail, etc. Or we can use telephone or any other video conferencing, teleconferencing, audio conferencing as the tools to disseminate the information what we want to disseminate for the other individuals. But in mass communication, the advantage is we can reach with the content for the large number of audiences at a time. And in this interactive communication, there is a possibility we can communicate the information depending on our own time, and there is a depending on the convenience of the other person, they can perceive the information or receive the information that is also there. But if it is a video conferencing, teleconferencing, audio conferencing, etc., then you have to invite the other persons also to participate in the communication. And if it is a mass communication, as the communication is dispersed at a particular point of time, if you miss, that is also the audience may miss the communication sometimes depending on their availability, accessibility, etc. But with the help of this, what we have, the YouTube, that is facilitated by the internet, with the help of this YouTube channels, etc., we may go back and receive the content, we can expose to the mass media content that is presented through the mass communication channels, again with the help of this YouTube platform, which is enabled with the help of internet, etc. So that is interactive communication. Hmm. We have some more time. You have any doubts here? Each communication type have its own advantages and disadvantages. Bhagya, no doubts.
మేడం
చెప్పండి.
నేను తెలుగులో మాట్లాడొచ్చండి?
మాట్లాడొచ్చు, చెప్పండి.
మేడం నేను చాలా డిస్టెన్స్ తర్వాత ఎడ్యుకేషన్‌కి వచ్చాను.
ఓకే.
మీరు చెప్తుంది నాకు కొంచెం ఇంగ్లీష్‌లో అర్థం కావడం లేదు. లెసన్స్ పేరు నాకు నంబర్ లెసన్స్ ఏదో నాకు మీరు చెప్తారా మేడం?
లెసన్స్ నేను చెప్పడమా? దేంట్లో అంటున్నారు?
మీరిప్పుడు సెకండ్ లెసన్ చెప్పారు.
ఓకే.
మధ్యలో మాస్ మీడియా అనేది ఎక్కడిది అనేది నేను చెక్ చేసుకుంటే అది 6థ్ లెసన్ వరకు వెళ్ళింది.
లేదు, మీకు సెకండ్ యూనిట్‌లో మాస్ మీడియా అని కాకుండా టైపాలజీ ఆఫ్ కమ్యూనికేషన్‌లో సెకండ్ యూనిట్‌లో ఉంది మీది లాస్ట్.
ఆ!
అది దాని గురించి చెప్పాను. అంటే మాస్ కమ్యూనికేషన్ అనేది ఏంటంటే లార్జ్ అంటే ఎక్కువ మందికి ఒకేసారి కమ్యూనికేషన్ రీచ్ అయితే దాన్ని మాస్ కమ్యూనికేషన్ అంటాం కదా!
అవును.
దాంట్లో
అవును.
ఏంటంటే మీకు న్యూస్ పేపర్స్, టెలివిజను, మ్యాగజైన్స్, బుక్స్ ఇట్లాంటివన్నీ పార్ట్ ఆఫ్ ఇట్ అనమాట. ఇవన్నీ ఏంటనంటే ఎవరికైనా కూడా రీచ్ అయ్యేందుకు అవైలబుల్‌గా ఉంటాయి. సో, దానికోసం మనం మాస్ మీడియా అని అంటాం వాటిని, ఛానల్స్‌ని.
ఓకే.
సో, కమ్యూనికేషన్ ఎవరికి రీచ్ అవుతుందనంటే, ఇప్పుడు టెలివిజన్ తీసుకుంటే మీకు శాటిలైట్ టెక్నాలజీ ఉంది గదా! శాటిలైట్ టెక్నాలజీ తెలుసు గదా!
అవునండి. ఆ!
ఓకే. శాటిలైట్ టెక్నాలజీ తోటి ఏంటనంటే, ఏమంటాం మనము సిగ్నల్స్‌ని మనం ఒక ఎర్త్ స్టేషన్ నుంచి పంపించేస్తాం ఆ ప్రోగ్రామ్స్‌ని. మీకు
హ్మ్.
కి అవి రీచ్ అవుతాయి. అప్లింకింగ్ అంటాం ఆ ప్రాసెస్‌ని.
హ్మ్.
తర్వాత మనం డౌన్‌లింక్ చేసుకునేటందుకు మళ్ళీ కొన్ని స్టేషన్స్ ఉంటాయి. అక్కడి నుంచి అగైన్ మనము డీటీహెచ్ సర్వీస్ అంటాంగా, డీటీహెచ్ సర్వీస్ ద్వారా మనం డైరెక్ట్‌గా గూడా హోమ్‌కి డెలివరీ అవుతుంది ఆ కంటెంట్. లేదు అనంటే విత్ ద హెల్ప్ ఆఫ్ మల్టీ సిస్టమ్ ఆపరేటర్స్ గానీ, కేబుల్ సిస్టమ్ ఆపరేటర్స్ త్రూ గానీ మనకి కంటెంట్ డెలివరీ అవుతుంది. సో, ఆల్
ఓకే.
దిస్ ఏంటనంటే మాస్ కమ్యూనికేషన్‌లో భాగం అనమాట. మాస్ కమ్యూనికేషన్‌లో టెలివిజను, న్యూస్ పేపర్సు, రేడియో ఇట్లాంటివన్నీ టూల్స్‌గా యూజ్ చేస్తాం. ఎందుకు? ఆహ్, వాళ్ళ ఎక్కువ మందికి రీచ్ అవ్వడం కోసం కంటెంట్ అంతే.
ఓకే.
హ్మ్. ఇంకేమైనా
మేడం,
డౌట్ ఉందా?
మేడం దీనికి నోట్స్ మీరెప్పుడిస్తారండి? మీరు
మీకు
చెప్పిన దానికి?
నేను పార్ట్ ఆఫ్ ఉస్మానియా యూనివర్సిటీ. మీ వాళ్ళని అడగండి. మీకు బుక్స్ రాలేదా, టెక్స్ట్ బుక్స్?
వచ్చినియి. వచ్చినియండి.
దాంట్లోనే ఉంటుంది మీకు కంటెంట్.
వచ్చినియి.
అందులో నుంచే చదువుకోవాలి ఇంకా. క్లాసెస్ అయితే మీకు ఆల్రెడీ యూట్యూబ్ లైవ్‌లో వస్తుంది చూడండి ఇది. ఆహ్, BRAOU లైవ్ 9 అనేదో ఉంది ఛానెల్ పేరు. దాంట్లో మేము చెప్పే
ఆ!
లెసన్స్ మీకు రికార్డ్ అవుతాయి. మీరెప్పుడన్నా మళ్ళీ వెళ్లి చూసుకోవచ్చు అనుకుంటే చూడొచ్చు యూట్యూబ్‌లో.
ఓకే
నిన్నటిది గూడా
మేడం.
వచ్చేసింది ఆల్రెడీ, నేను చెక్ చేశాను పొద్దున. నిన్న
ఆ!
క్లాస్ కూడా
అవును.
ఉంది.
చూసాను మేడం.
చూసిర్రా?
హ్మ్. చూసాను.
అంటే మీకు ఇన్ కేస్ ఏమైనా డౌట్స్ ఉంటేనేమో పర్సనల్‌గా మమ్మల్ని కాంటాక్ట్ అయినా పర్లేదు. మీకు ఇన్ఫర్మేషన్ ఇస్తాము. లేదు అనంటే మీరు యూట్యూబ్‌లో మళ్ళీ చూసుకోవచ్చు. ప్రీవియస్ లెక్చర్స్ కూడా ఉన్నాయి. లాస్ట్ ఇయర్ లెక్చర్స్ కూడా ఉన్నాయి కొన్ని. మీరు
ఆహా!
చూడండి. హ్మ్. ఇంకా ఎక్కువ
ఓ
ఏమైనా డౌట్స్ ఉంటే అడగొచ్చు.
మేడం మీకు ఒకవేళ నేను అంటే మీకు డౌట్ క్లారిటీ చేసుకోవడానికి మీకు ఎలా కాంటాక్ట్ అవ్వాలి?
నాకు కాంటాక్ట్ కావాలంటే ఫోను నంబర్ ఇవ్వనా? ఇవ్వనా?
ఫోను నంబర్ ఇవ్వండి మేడం.
నేను మీకు
నాకు
మెసేజ్‌లో
డౌట్
టైప్
ఉంటే
చేస్తాను.
మీకు అడుగుతాను.
మెసేజ్‌లో టైప్ చేస్తున్నాను. మీరు
ఆ!
యూ
ఓకే
కెన్
మేడం.
కాల్. ఆహ్,
ఓకే మేడం.
166 మెయిల్ ఐడీ ఉంది. ఫోను నంబర్ ఉంది. కానీ ఎప్పుడైనా మేము లిఫ్ట్ చేయకపోతే కాల్ బ్యాక్ చేస్తాము క్లాసెస్‌లో ఎక్కడైనా ఉంటే. ఓకేనా?
ఓకే మేడం. ఓకే మేడం.
సో ఇక్కడికైతే క్లియర్ కదా? వాట్ వి హావ్
ఆ!
డిస్కస్డ్ ఇస్ ద ఫంక్షన్స్ ఆఫ్ కమ్యూనికేషన్, ఇంకా డిఫరెంట్ టైప్స్ ఆఫ్ కమ్యూనికేషన్. ఒక్కరే వాళ్ళ లోపల వాళ్ళు మాట్లాడుకుంటే అది ఇంట్రాపర్సనల్ కమ్యూనికేషన్. ఇద్దరు కలిసి మాట్లాడుకుంటా ఉంటే దాన్ని ఇంటర్పర్సనల్ కమ్యూనికేషన్ అంటాము. గ్రూప్‌లో ఏదైనా డిస్కషన్ జరిగితే దాన్ని గ్రూప్ కమ్యూనికేషన్ అంటాం. మాస్ కమ్యూనికేషన్ అంటే
ఓకే.
మాస్ మీడియా ఆర్గనైజేషను ఏదైతే ఇన్ఫర్మేషన్‌ని డిసెమినేట్ చేయాలనుకుంటాం, జనరల్‌గా అయితే న్యూస్. వాట్ దే డిసెమినేట్ ఈస్ సంథింగ్ కాల్డ్ యాస్ ఎ న్యూస్. సో న్యూస్ త్రూఅవుట్ ద గ్లోబ్ అందరికి డిసెమినేట్ చేయడానికి వి యూజ్ మాస్ మీడియా ఛానల్స్. Yes?
హ్మ్.
Hmm.
ఓకే
Chalo,
మేడం.
shall we move on to the other thing, or we have some 7 minutes or so? Yes. Shall we discuss the other things?
Yes,
We'll,
ma'am.
hmm. We'll move on to the models of communication that is there in your unit 3, I believe. Yes? You have your textbooks, no?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Somewhere I can share the screen కదా, చెక్ చేస్తున్నాను. మోడల్స్ షేర్ చేస్తాను. డయాగ్రామ్స్ ఉన్నాయి కదా. ఏదో వస్తుంది, షేర్ స్క్రీన్ ఆప్షన్ వస్తుందా? ఎస్, ఇది మోడల్స్. నౌ యు ఆర్ ఏబుల్ టు సీ కదా ఇది?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, madam. Yes, madam.
ఓకే. సో విల్ డిస్కస్. సో వాట్ ఈస్ కమ్యూనికేషన్ మోడల్? ఇప్పుడే ఫస్ట్ వింటున్నారేమో కదా క్లాస్లో.
Yes, ma'am.
ఓకే. సో కమ్యూనికేషన్ మోడల్ ఏంటంటే మళ్ళీ ఇంగ్లీష్ తెలుగు అయితే ఓకే. సో కమ్యూనికేషన్ మోడల్స్ ఆర్ నథింగ్ బట్ ద మోడల్స్ విచ్ వర్ ప్రపోజ్ టు ఎక్స్ప్లెయిన్ ద ప్రాసెస్ ఆఫ్ కమ్యూనికేషన్. అంటే కమ్యూనికేషన్ ప్రాసెస్ ఎట్లా ఉంటుందని ఇమాజినేషన్ తోటి వాళ్ళు ప్రపోజ్ చేశారు మెనీ కమ్యూనికేషన్ స్కాలర్స్. So communication models will try to explain the process of communication, from how the communication is taking place between the individuals. When information is transmitted from a source, what happens? What are the steps which are involved in the communication process, or what are the elements which are there in the communication process, etc. All that information, with the help of the communication models, different communication scholars try to explain. ఓకే. సో కమ్యూనికేషన్ ఎవరు? నాగేశ్వర్ ఎవరో ఆడియో ఆన్ చేశారు జస్ట్. ఓకే. సో కమ్యూనికేషన్ మోడల్స్ విల్ ట్రై టు ఎక్స్ప్లెయిన్ ద ప్రాసెస్ ఆఫ్ కమ్యూనికేషన్ అండ్ దే ఆల్సో ట్రై టు ఎక్స్ప్లెయిన్ the elements of communication. So what are the elements which are there in the communication process? So the models were proposed based on the imagination. From 1948 onwards we have some of the communication models which were proposed by different scholars. They will try to they were try to explain the communication process with the help of the simple diagrams, etc. So here, communication models will explain the process of communication, the structure of communication, various elements in the communication process. Along with that, the independence of each element in the communication process and its interdependence. And a good communication model will try to explain in detail how the communication happens in reality, etc. So here, the first person, there is a person called Aristotle. He proposed on communication model. He says that communication needs to have only three elements: the sender, message, and the receiver. If these three elements are there, based on that only the communication happens. So here, the Laswell is the other person who proposed this model called, it is also called as a Laswell model of communication in the year 1948. According to him, if you want to understand the communication process, he proposed a serial question called "Who says what in which channel to whom with what effect?" So here, to understand the process of communication, you need to know all these elements in the communication process, or you need to answer the serial question to come to know about the various stages which are there in the communication process. So here, who is a person generally? Who is generally the source who is communicating some information. What he says what is a message, in which channel, the channel of communication, what medium he is using to communicate the messages, to whom is the receiver, with what effect is the change or effect, or the change which happened within the receiver after receiving the communication. So here, who is a generally the communicator or a source who is wishing to communicate some messages, that we call it as the message. So as an individual we might have a lot of information to be disseminated, but here the individual again, depending on his self, his mood, etc., he only communicates some information. What he communicates, we call it as a message. So message may include the verbal communication and also non-verbal cues, but this lossful communication is called as a linear process model of communication, which says that communication is only for flowing in one direction. Because of that, this can be applicable to the mass communication. So here, the who is a communicator, or the one who is initiating the process of communication, what he communicates, what he says is a message, in which channel is the channel or the medium which carries the messages from the source to the receiver, to whom is the receiver of a communication, and with what effect is the measurable or observable change which happens in the receiver after receiving a message from the source. That is what we call it as a effect. So Loss will propose these five elements: who says what, in which, to whom, with what effect, are as the elements of communication to understand the process of communication. So here, this is also a linear model of communication, as it explains the process of communication, uh, which is flowing only in one direction. We also have the other models like Voscoud and Strom model that speaks about the human communication. According to them, communication is a circular process, etc. And there is a ABX model which speaks communication plays an important role in maintaining equilibrium or balance in the society. And we also have, as part of your syllabus, we have Berlow's SMCR model, Shannon and Weaver model. Then we have Laswell model, and one more model is there. Uh, SMCR, Shannon, Laswell, Osgood, and Shambu. You have, as part of your fourth unit, you have only four models of communication. Those will discuss. Yes, the time up. I have to wind up the session. Okay. If you have any doubts, you can just we'll discuss in the next class. Tomorrow we'll discuss the models of communication and theories also. Yes. If you have any doubts, please note down your doubts. We'll clarify in tomorrow's session. Not tomorrow. I think we have next session on Saturday. Yes. I'm leaving the session. Please note down if you have any doubts. Note down your questions. I will clarify in the next class. That is Saturday at 10 a.m.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Right.
Thanks, ma'am.
Right.
Thank you, ma'am.
Right. Bye.